It's not the mayor, it's not the alderman, it's not the city manager who make a community work. It's people who really care about the community and do their thing behind the scenes. And I think that that's the great thing about an Al Parker is not just the things that you know of that he's recognized for, but that he did an awful lot of things that no one ever heard about, and nor were they supposed to hear about.
He knew that he came from humble circumstances and that Canada was a land of opportunity. If you were willing to work, you could achieve, no matter what your background was. He took great pride in being a Canadian. He was proud of his history as a Black person whose family had contributed to the building of Canada. He was a caring person. He cared for his family and his community. What he achieved, he wanted others to achieve.
Alton Parker achieved a great deal. He was born in 1907 in the predominantly black Glengarry area of Windsor, Ontario. His family was deeply religious. In his early teens, his mother died, and he and his sister were raised by his father.
When Daddy was a teenager, his father was quite strict. Several of his friends were going joyriding, and he was all set to go until the last minute when his father suggested he hadn't finished a chore, hadn't done it properly, and kept him home. Well, I remember him saying that on that occasion, I don't know whether they ran out of gas or what happened, but there was a holdup involved and a shooting. And that made a great impression on him. He never forgot that instance and said, "There, but for the grace of God, go I."
Perhaps this incident sparked his lifelong concern for young people and his desire to see a better world for them, a world unencumbered by racial intolerance such as he had experienced, even on his wedding night.
They were going to the Mecca of all honeymooners, Niagara Falls, and my father was driving a smart little roadster that he had worked so very hard reconditioning. But when they got to Niagara Falls, they couldn't find a hotel that would accept them because of their blackness. So they ended up spending their wedding night in the car.
While his deep religious convictions saw him through these trials, he became increasingly determined to break down racial intolerance. He started right in his own community by joining and later becoming president of the Central Citizens Association.
During my father's younger years, there was a Central Citizens Association, which was made up of Black residents. And one of the issues they addressed was the limited employment for Blacks in the area. We have been taxpayers in the area since before Windsor was incorporated as a city, and yet the number of employees in the city government were nil. So this organization went to the city fathers, addressed that issue, and were told, send us some qualified young people and we'll see what we can do. Now, my father and two others applied to the police department, and he was selected. Now, at this time, he was employed in Detroit in his trade, which was an auto mechanic. He was foreman of the used car department at Nash, Detroit, and making pretty good money. So he had some decision-making to do. He and my mom discussed it, endlessly. It would mean a cut in pay. It would mean a lot of sacrifices. He was used to being his own boss, and now he would be an underling. And the decision was made that he would go ahead, accept the appointment, and work with it.
On September 1st, 1942, Alton Parker became the second black hired by the Windsor Police Department, the first to actually be employed as a constable.
He loved police work. He saw it as an opportunity to help. He believed in the newer concept that we're talking about now, police service rather than a police force. He was a believer then. He believed that police personnel were in the community to serve the community.
You could see this in his demeanor and in his approach to everything that he got involved with. It seemed like he felt he was really overcoming something, not for himself, but on behalf of all the people that he represented.
From the beginning, he encouraged other blacks not only, to join the police force, but to spread out into different vocations. He encouraged young men who certainly expressed an interest in policing as a career, and when he came upon some that he thought could become interested, he did encourage them. He was a recruiter.
His gains within the police force were not without a price.
When it came to arresting, if someone had broken the law, he was there to serve the law. But when it came to blacks, I don't believe he showed it, but it took an emotional toll because these were his people. And in the case of young people, I think he just wondered, had things been different, would it have been this way? He felt strongly that the community at large perhaps had let these young people down, that the system did not treat them equitably, but he also felt that the black community had a responsibility towards these young people too. And I know that he was torn.
While some of his police colleagues were supportive, others were less so. Yet, Alton remained determined to perform the same functions and demand the same respect as other members of the force.
Alton at one time was working on the afternoon shift, and his area was Wyandotte and Willette. That was part of his beat. And he was standing, he had done all his doors and was standing on the corner. And one of the senior officers, who was off duty at the time, came along and called him over to the car and told him that there was a broken bottle on the street, and told him to get a broom and to pick it up. And at this time, Alton told him that he was hired as a policeman and not a street sweeper, and that if he wanted the glass picked up, he better call the Board of Works because he wasn't picking it up. And the officer drove away without Alton picking up the glass.
His love of police work led to involvement in the Windsor Police Association.
It was while we were both in uniform that we both served on the executive committee of the Windsor Police Association. And I only recall ever attending one convention with Alton and those of us who were designates at that time, and that was in 1949 in Peterborough. And the president of the Ontario Police Association, and I can't remember his name, drew attention to the fact that he was both pleased and elated at the fact that for the first time in the history of the Ontario Police Association, a colored person or a black person was representing members of his force, and that person was Alton Parker from Windsor, Ontario. It drew quite a round of applause, and I'm sure Alton was very proud of this recognition. Unfortunately, during the course of people who were being introduced to speak and to greet us, one of these persons opened his remarks with what was supposed to be a funny story. And the story had an unfortunate, uncomplimentary remark about the black race. And I must say, to my surprise, and of course to the surprise of all of those who were sitting around, Alton stood up and left the auditorium. It was evident that it was also noticed from the platform, and the speaker hurriedly admitted that he was in error by having used remarks that evidently upset Alton.
Through his many years of policing, Alton Parker never failed to see his role as providing service to his community. This was often demonstrated in his dealings with young people. A young Paul Lucier and some friends were arrested by Alton Parker when they broke into a house and vandalized some of the contents.
And the thing that I remember most about him was first of all, to establish that we were the ones who were there and that we had indeed created the damage that had been done. And there was none of this trying to load more responsibility on us than there was, or to take any of it away. His whole approach seemed to be to point out to us that this was someone else's property. It didn't matter whose property it was not ours. And then we had to respect other people's property. And I can remember that was his focus, was that this was someone else's property. And that's something that stayed with me through my life.
In July 1951, after a brief 9 years in uniform, Alton Parker became Canada's first black detective. In his time in uniform, he had not only served his community as a policeman, he had served his race by changing many of the attitudes and sensitivities of his fellow officers.
I worked with him one day. When driving down the street, he paid attention to some children that were playing on the sidewalk, and he said, "Look, Charlie, there's our coming generation." And I replied what I thought was all right. I said, "Yeah, that's a great bunch of pickaninnies." Al? He said, "I wouldn't call them that if I were you." He said, "They're human beings." And of course, we had quite a talk after that. I said, "You know, Al," I said, "I'm sorry I made that remark. I'm sorry I drew that, but," I said, "to me, that's a term that is meant to be complimentary or fond. It's a fond type of remark when you speak about little colored children as pickaninnies." I never used the word pickaninnies to him again after that. Unless he brought this to your attention, you'd never know that you had been offended.
While Alton Parker quietly and almost single-handedly broke down racial intolerance in Windsor, in the turbulent 1960s, the calls for change reached a fever pitch in Selma, Alabama.
I remember one incident when there was a protest march against the Selma incident in the States in the 60s. There was a demonstration march here in Windsor. And of course, someplace in the policing education that he got, it wasn't the right thing to do for a policeman to demonstrate against authority. And right up to time for the march, he was undecided. He was torn by his emotions. And when we lined up, my husband and I had made our decision. We were marching. Right up to the time we lined up, my father was uncertain, and then he strode in and joined us. I asked him afterwards, "Why were you there? Why did you demonstrate, Daddy?" And he said, "I could not be here."
Even in retirement, he remained vitally interested in seeing racial intolerance eliminated in police forces. When the Ontario Task Force on Race Relations and Policing came to Windsor in 1989, Alton Parker was there.
He had not asked to make a presentation, but they asked if he would remain to speak to them. They would value his input. The first question put, as I remember, was, is there racism demonstrated within the Windsor police force? And his answer was yes. Very clear, very concise, yes. They asked, should it be addressed? And is there, what would you suggest? He again said yes, it should be addressed. He felt that there should be intensive training, and he did feel that the Civilian Review Board situation would be a method of attaining this. When an incident is reported, that not just the investigation as it is done now through police channels, but that a Civilian Review Board be used also.
I believe that if Al had not have been involved in police work, he would still have become that community involved, that he would have found a way to bring his commitment out into the community.
Alton Parker's commitment to his community was demonstrated many times outside of police work. It seemed whenever people were in need, Alton Parker was there. He was a founding member of Alpha House, apartment living for physically handicapped adults, and a member of the board of Goodwill Industries. Every year he sold Goodfellow newspapers and helped wrap the Christmas baskets that organization donated. He was made an honorary member of the Rotary Club of Windsor, an organization which helped him with his Uncle Al's birthday parties he and his wife Evelyn founded. The purpose of these parties was to give a bit of enjoyment to the local underprivileged children who never had opportunities for vacations or summer camps. Started in 1966 with 16 neighborhood children, by 1988 over 1,000 attended, including children from outside Canada. Alton's commitment to these annual parties was indicative of his commitment to young people.
I believe everything that Alton did, both him and his wife Evelyn, in his identity as a police officer and his identity as a good religious, deeply religious black person, that everything he did was intended to contribute to the betterment of the relationships between black and white people, not only here in Windsor, but all over. I think this is evident in the annual parties that he started, his Uncle Al parties. He was always mindful of the fact that if we didn't teach our young children to overcome these prejudices and intolerances, that we couldn't hope to have a better future.
Although he never sought recognition for his charitable works, it found him many times. In 1976, he received the Order of Canada and the Ontario Medal for Good Citizenship. He received International Rotary and Sertoma Awards, as well as the North American Black Historical Museum's Person of the Year Award. In 1986, he received the prestigious Harry Jerome Award, recognition of his value as a role model for young black people.
Well, he saw it as his Christian commitment. And he liked people. He believed in people. And he was curious about different ethnic groups and their customs and what made them different, and of that differentness, how it could enrich our culture. I think it was a very basic thing to him. It was just something that had to be done. We all have our little prejudices, and we have to learn to deal with them. He cared about his city and his neighborhood, and he cared about the children that grew here. One of the big things with him, with the party, was not only entertaining the children for the day, but teaching them lessons. One of the things he wanted to do was present role models to them. And he invited city dignitaries, professionals, members of Parliament, Mounties, Ontario Provincial Police, and Windsor Police. He wanted reps from all the forces to be there so that the children could see them, so they would have an appreciation for each other develop. That was a very big thing with him because he was a policeman to the bone. And he felt that if the police got to know the children, it would help reduce problems. And if the children got to know that the police were their friends and could be trusted as friends, it would help the children.
I think that the great legacy of Al Parker is that Windsor's a better place because Al Parker was here.
Thank you all for coming. Are you with me on the song, God Be With Us? Let me see your hands if you are. God be with us till we meet again. Let's stand. By his counsel I'll hold him. Through his sick securely fold you. God be with us till we meet again.